Today we bring you a mysterious and intriguing story called Kisaragi Station. This is a true story that gained attention on a famous Japanese online forum called 2channel. And when this post was made, many people claimed they had experienced similar incidents. Whether you believe it or not is up to you to decide. First, let me briefly introduce the origin of this story. Kisaragi Station is a mysterious station in a city that was once featured on a mysterious page titled Strange Phenomena Happening Around You on the 2channel forum in 2004. A user named Hasumi posted a strange story about her train journey home. A journey that took her to an experience not everyone could encounter, a train ride to an unmanned station, more precisely a station that does not exist on the map of Japan. This mysterious incident occurred within 4 hours of her boarding the train. Even after 15 years, users on the 2channel forum still cannot explain the mystery of this story. Summary of the story: Kisaragi Station. There is a user named Hasumi. She boarded the 2340 train from Shinjuku Station in Yokomatsu City, Shizuoka Prefecture to go home. And something strange happened. Normally, the train would stop after a few minutes, but today it had been running for over 20 minutes without stopping. There were 5 passengers sleeping on the train. The train finally stopped, but it stopped at a station that doesn't exist. That station is called Kisaragi. Around the station, there were only mountains and wild grass, no signs of public phones or any taxis. Hasumi was terrified and had no other choice but to follow the railroad tracks in hopes of finding her way home, and the strange phenomena began. The story begins with Hasumi getting off at a train station named Kisaragi, a deserted station, a station she had never heard of before. What do you think made Hasumi get off at this place, where she had no knowledge? Hasumi had a bad feeling when on the train, an indescribable feeling, and didn't know when the train would stop again. She thought she had gone too far from her home, so she decided to get off the train. But she didn't know that things didn't stop there. She began to look for the train schedule board hoping there would be a return trip, but there wasn't. This station was very strange, things that should be there were not. Yes, there was no train schedule board. And the train she got off had already departed long ago. In this deserted place, it was now 12:36 a.m., and Hasumi couldn't find any taxis. She was very scared. How to get home now? In a state of panic, she tremblingly picked up her phone to call her family for help, but no one in her family could determine which station she was standing at in Japan. Members on the 2channel forum also searched for information about Kisaragi Station to help her, but they didn't find any clues. As for Hasumi, she decided to walk along the railway hoping to get home. Indeed, according to normal logical reasoning, the railways are connected, so by following this path, she might eventually get home. It's now 1:18 a.m. There was a call from her father. Her father had informed the police, but the police considered it a prank call and did not search for her. As the night grew darker, Hasumi kept walking along the railway, and she posted on the forum when she heard distant sounds like bells and taiko, a Japanese drum. Suddenly she heard a chilling voice from behind. Walking on the railway is very dangerous. Hasumi thought it was a railway employee. She turned around and saw the figure of an elderly man missing one leg. But his figure vanished into thin air. She was very scared and tried to get closer to where the bell sound was coming from. Hasumi continued to walk, and before her eyes was a tunnel named Isaga, After Hasumi left the tunnel, she met a kind stranger who offered to give her a ride. It was 3:10 a.m. When Hasumi asked where this was, she was told it was the city of Fuji in Shizuoka Prefecture, 100 kilometers from Shinyokamatsu. Ignoring the warnings from everyone on 2 Channel, Hasumi got into the car of the stranger. To be honest, having someone standing in the middle of the road like this in the middle of the night is really strange. The fast-moving car advanced into the forest. The man said nothing, just kept muttering something to himself incessantly. Hasumi posted that. At this point, Hasumi's phone battery had run out, leaving only a few lines of text. "I will try to escape. This may be my last message if something happens." And that was her final post. After that, despite the uproar on the forum, Hasumi didn't post anything else. No one knew what had happened to that girl. Time passed. 7 years later in 2011, an account named Hasumi resumed the story. That night, Hasumi's car stopped in the middle of the forest. She noticed a faint light in the distance and approached it. Just then, a man appeared and said to her, "The driver has disappeared. Right now, you must run away from here immediately. Head towards that light." Natsumi recounted that she was dazzled, and when she closed her eyes, she saw her parents calling her. And her memories from the past 7 years had completely vanished. Nothing remained within her. 2 months later, another person tweeted, "I arrived at Kisaragi Station after falling asleep on the train." An image was attached. After that, railway enthusiasts began to investigate the story. But after chaos ensued, this person closed their Twitter account and disappeared. Subsequently, several people continued to post that they had arrived at Kisaragi Station. Thus, this story has continued until now. Furthermore, within the railway community, some claim to know about this Kisaragi station very well. But an undeniable fact is that this station doesn't exist on any Japanese railway line. Therefore, Kisaragi Station remains a chilling mystery that no one can explain. It doesn't exist, yet there are those who have experienced it in a strange and inexplicable way. Kisaragi Station has since become a story of discussion and a source of terror for late-night train travelers in Japan. In 2019, both the Thai and Cambodian governments officially reopened the railway line from Ban Kalong Luk, Thailand, to Poipet, Cambodia. In the late 1980s and early 1990s, I had been in this area. The train station in the town of Poipet, Cambodia, had been closed since 1974 due to the war, and it was desolate and bleak at that time, with many bunkers erected on both sides. After the Vietnamese Volunteer Army ousted the Khmer Rouge, they returned this area to the new government of Cambodia. At that time, I was in the area of Pin Lake, which means tamarind tree in Vietnamese, a lake built by the Khmer Rouge government to store fresh water for the locals due to severe drought in the region. The lake covered an area of over 1 square kilometer, surrounded by several small Cambodian villages. Back then, this area was part of Battambang province, now Banteay Meanchey. Across the Thai border, a few kilometers away were roads 3346 and 3308, 2 parallel roads intersecting in the northwest of the lake before heading deep into the Thai mainland. This area was familiar to former soldiers, with notorious strategic checkpoints like Ampin, Poipet, 175, Phumalai, Kampong Lam. This place, with its dense bamboo forests, was littered with countless landmines and human bones, as it was a route through the Poipet border crossing where traders and border crossers frequented. Pol Pot soldiers and bandits often lurked here, ambushing and robbing desperate people, including many Vietnamese fleeing the Khmer Rouge regime to Thailand. That's how it used to be, but since liberation, this place has transformed drastically. Just a few years after we returned, we were amazed by the changes. Nowadays, this area is one of the most bustling casino hubs in Cambodia, with Aranyaprathet district in Sa Kaeo province, Thailand, just across the border. In the past, I used to hear the villagers from the village, along with other comrades here, talk about the ghostly stories of this place. Due to my interest in exploring eerie places and supernatural stories, I was always curious and asked in many ways wherever I went. And here I heard quite a few stories of that kind. Let me tell you some snippets for fun. During the war, Poipet was desolate and empty in many places. People only lived far from the border checkpoints, and there was an abandoned commune near Lake Pin. Later, remnants of the Khmer Rouge returned and established a relatively large base there. I can't remember its name clearly now, and it no longer bears any resemblance to its past. Modern houses have sprung up beautifully, and there were quite a few trails that could cross into Thailand. One afternoon, two comrades told me they had spotted many shadowy figures lurking along the road. Since there were still smugglers sneaking through there from time to time, I wasn't really surprised. But what puzzled me was why they dared to travel on those roads when it was still light or at dusk, as they usually sneaked through at night. One night, the moon shone brightly as my 5 brothers and I returned from the Thai border. We walked about 5 to 7 meters apart, observing our surroundings as we went. As we passed through a field, preparing to enter a sparse grove of thorny bamboo, we all noticed numerous vague figures ahead, accompanied by the sound of women and girls chattering. The bamboo grove rose up like a mushroom in the barren area, clearly visible for observation and surrounded like a besieged fortress. We thought they might be remnants of enemy troops, so we quickly split into 2 groups to intercept them. Since we had passed through this area many times during the day, we were familiar with the terrain like the back of our hands. The tip of SS spear cut ahead, swiftly catching sight of a gap in the clump of short bamboo shoots emerging from the grove towards the field. S and I, along with another comrade, followed closely behind. When we saw the dark figures disappear into the bamboo, we advanced as well, blocking their escape route, but strangely, as we entered the bamboo grove, they seemed to vanish into thin air without a single sound. We thought they must have sensed our presence and gone into hiding. We cautiously searched every inch of the area, but found nothing. The sky was scorching hot, so we gathered to rest and whispered to each other, wondering where they had disappeared to. Finally, N gave the order to withdraw. S and I brought up the rear. Strangely enough, as we emerged from the bamboo grove to the edge of a dry ditch, illuminated by the bright moonlight, I saw them behind me, only about 20 meters away. I could clearly see that the one leading them was a woman. I picked up a clod of dirt and tossed it at SS back, but he had already noticed. He signaled for me to sit down, and the others followed suit. Under the bright moonlight, a group of 11 people. We counted carefully and there were 11, including 2 children, all of them women, girls. They were trailing behind us, along the same trail, but when we sat down with our guns ready, they walked past us. It seemed as though they were moving parallel to us. They all walked silently under the moonlight. Earlier, we could hear them talking, but when they passed by us, both sides were about 10 meters apart. We all sat in silence, gaping in disbelief, as they passed by. There were many small dry thorny bushes on their side, but as they walked past, not a single sound was made. The insects continued chirping, which was very strange, because in such deserted places at night, insects were usually a sign of human presence. But here, even after they passed, the insects kept chirping. When we met with the border guards and some locals later, I heard them recounting that we weren't the only ones to experience such a strange encounter. The former comrades who had been stationed there practically every night had also encountered them. They were the villagers who had been robbed and murdered by the bandits several years ago, and they still lurked in that grove of thorny bamboo and the deserted area. Later, as we retreated to point 175 where the dense bamboo groves were, we came across many human skeletons below. There were even skeletons of children and women, whom I thought were Vietnamese because of their long hair and the white stainless steel hairpins that Vietnamese women used to wear. Meanwhile, the Cambodian people, from the elderly to the young, all had their hair cut short according to the Khmer Rouge rules. The other day, I was at the house of a railway employee, and I heard him tell a story, which was the third time I had heard it, from 3 people, a comrade and 2 Cambodians. At the Poi Pit train station, during the Vietnam War era, the 1960s and 1970s, there was a Vietnamese girl, the daughter of a wealthy aristocrat, whose father was a high-ranking official in the previous regime. Her father owned a small mansion right at the border gate, now a hotel with a cafe and a beautiful small feng shui lake. For reasons unknown, the girl took her own life at that very station in 1971. The train crushed her body into pieces, causing a sensation and stirring public opinion for a long time. It was said that she committed suicide due to a romantic affair. Afterward, numerous ghost stories about this girl circulated among the local people. Above the station gate, there is a small iron bridge, and even now, there is an altar with a curved roof where the girl's head was found. Initially, they thought her head had been crushed by the train, but somehow it had followed the train and ended up there, over 100 meters away from the site of the accident, and fell into the canal below. A few days after the accident, during a noontime, an elderly lady passing by the train station suddenly burst into loud and uncontrollable crying. She walked with her hand stretched out in front of her as if she were blind. She walked toward the bridge, crying and demanding that everyone retrieve her head. Many people witnessed the police retrieving the girl's mutilated head, but no one could explain why. The lady and the girl were entirely unfamiliar with each other, and the lady was just a visitor from afar. A nearby station employee recounted that since childhood, he had witnessed the ghostly apparition of this girl walking along the railway tracks to the bridge. At that time, the station was closed due to the war, and it was in ruins. The headless girl would sway back and forth on the old train tracks, clearly visible in the moonlit night. After the girl's accident, there were several tragic train accidents that occurred at the station within a month, strangely only at the station itself, not at the intersecting roads outside. Former station employees, now mostly deceased, recalled that during their night shifts, they would often hear the sound of train bells, door knocks, and the girl screaming, forcing them to search for their own bodies and reattach their limbs. Some railway guards claimed that occasionally, while sitting and drinking tea at night, their teacups would turn blood red and have a metallic taste, making it undrinkable. A man who still lives about 2 kilometers from the station recounted an incident where he was playing soccer at the station. A girl kept waving her hand, beckoning him to follow her. He followed her unconsciously, and suddenly, a train rushed by, taking his legs and several fingers, but he survived. The terrifying part was that before he passed out, he still saw the girl among the crowd, pulling him out. Her eyes were filled with anger, not the smiling face she had when she beckoned him. He was so scared that he never dared to go near that station again. The station employee also mentioned that many track maintenance workers were teased by this girl, who would knock on their doors at midnight and wrap her arms around them while walking on the railway tracks. The peak of these incidents was when one worker was fatally crushed by a train near the small iron bridge, where the girl's head was found years ago. Eventually, the responsible individuals at the station had to invite a spiritual master to perform rituals to suppress the rampage caused by this girl, and the accidents gradually decreased. However, since the reopening of the station in 2019, there have been strange occurrences. On one occasion, a train driver saw a girl standing with outstretched arms on the tracks, a short distance from the bridge. The train blew its horn and applied the brakes, but when they checked, there was nothing there. The most recent incident happened 2 months ago when the waiting room staff experienced a horrifying moment. At 9 p.m., while they were cleaning before going home, they suddenly smelled a strong, pungent odor. Upon investigation, they found a person lying on seat B, thinking it was a passenger who had fallen asleep. 2 staff members approached to wake the person up, but both screamed in terror and rushed out. They had discovered a disfigured corpse lying there. When people rushed in, there was nothing there, only a faint lingering odor in the room. Right outside that room is the veranda where, in the past, they would collect the girl's corpse after her suicide. Most recently, just 2 months ago, the lounge staff experienced a terrifying moment. At 9 p.m., as they were tidying up before closing, they suddenly caught a strong, pungent odor. Upon investigation, they found someone lying on bench B, seemingly a passenger who had fallen asleep and missed their train. When the 2 staff members approached to wake them, they both screamed in horror and rushed out, terrified beyond belief. On the bench lay nothing but a lifeless body. When others rushed in, strangely, there was nothing there at all, just a lingering scent in the room. Adjacent to this lounge was a veranda where, long ago, they used to store the body of a girl who had committed suicide. A horrifying secret lies beneath the London Underground system. Why are the subway lines in London, England, designed with gentle curves instead of straight paths to save time? Estimates suggest millions of people have used the London Underground, with its 270 stations spread across the city. It's also the most convenient and safest mode of transportation to navigate the capital of the foggy land. But perhaps many passengers stepping onto the tube are unaware of the story behind it. In 1665, the bubonic plague swept into London, recorded as one of the worst plague outbreaks in history, claiming the lives of about 100,000 people, equivalent to 1/5 of the city's population at the time. The high death toll led to the creation of plague pits, mass graves for the deceased. In 1863, nearly 200 years later, London officially opened the world's first underground railway. Looking at the map, one can notice many routes designed with gentle curves instead of straight paths to save time. Based on historical records, archaeologists have provided the most plausible explanation, when designing the lines, engineers had to avoid the plague pits to not disturb the deceased. Furthermore, experts also point out that the curved design of the subway lines not only avoids mass graves, but also relates to cost considerations. At that time, digging only 6 meters below ground, railway companies had to purchase real estate in affected areas. Given this situation, companies were forced to design routes to pass through the fewest residential areas possible to reduce costs. Hence, some stations had to be built over plague pits. For example, beneath Aldgate Station lies a mass grave of over 1,000 people who died from the plague. In 2013, a plague pit believed to be the largest was discovered in London, unearthed at Charterhouse Square. Here, an archaeological team found dozens of skeletal remains, but it is estimated that up to 50,000 bodies were interred in this area. Subsequently, experts from the London Museum arrived to excavate and study what remained. With the city's development, numerous underground and high-speed rail projects have traversed hundreds of communal burial grounds in London. Not all are strictly plague pits anymore, but could stem from other epidemic disasters such as cholera or smallpox. During construction, if encountering skeletal remains, the deceased are relocated to another burial site.